Well, I'm really happy to welcome you, Ritu SARIN, to this discussion, where we're going to learn about who you are and why you're here at the Festival des Trois Continents and what you have to do with Produire au Sud. So maybe if you could just start, because I know very little about you, if you could start by telling me what your own professional journey has been and how you were involved in the film industry.
Right. So I've been a filmmaker since my 20s, so it's a long time now. Started off making documentaries, moved on to doing some feature films, and also have done some art installations. So, and 10 years ago, in the small town where we live in the Himalayas called Dharamsala, we started a film festival. This is along with my partner Tenzing Sonam. And we just celebrated our 10th anniversary, a couple of weeks ago. So it's been a long journey, and I think we're interested with all things to do with independent cinema. And the importance is the word independent, the idea of like being able to express what you really want to, and we're very interested in not just ourselves expressing those things, but also nurturing a community of young people and filmmakers and making it possible, because we know how difficult it is to be a independent filmmaker, and even harder in other parts of the world, like in India, or we work a lot with Tibetan films in exile. Very, very difficult because there are no structures in place to support, people who want to talk about their ideas and their experience. So that's sort of what we are doing right now, but we combine them all together. So, we are still working on some feature films, some art projects while we do the film festival.
Wow. So let's, there's so much in there for me to explore. So Dharamsala is where, and you've made reference to the Tibetan community. So help me understand that place, and you've made reference to your partner. So I'd like to understand that a little bit more.
Yeah. So Dharamsala is in the Himalayas. It's about an hour's flight from Delhi, and it's the exiled home of the Dalai Lama. And it's the kind of the exile capital of the Tibetan community. And they have lived there since the early 60s. So they've been there for a very long time now. And my partner, Tenzing Sonam, is an exiled Tibetan. His parents came from Tibet and he was born in India. So we're very much part of that world. And have done a lot of films exploring the Tibetan issue, the issues of, like the political struggle, the cultural world of Tibet, and issues of exile. And so that has been one of the themes running through a lot of our films.
Fiction films or documentary?
Both. So yeah, over the years we started off with documentary, but then, we used to watch so many films and cinematheques, and, when we were students, go to film festivals, and so we always wanted to try our hand at fiction, and we have made 2 fiction films so far. And so we're interested in this kind of reality, and we just know how difficult it is. I think that's the thing to come back, because we live in a part of the world where there is so little support. Often, there is a big industry. Say in India, there's a big industry for film, but for independent cinema, there is so little. And it's easier to see independent cinema, for example, maybe at the festival here in Nantes, than it will be for us to see it in India. So, we are here watching Indian films, which are in the competition, that will be harder for us to watch over there.
Wow, so that explains why yesterday you said, look, can we please reschedule this discussion because I need to see this Indian film. Yeah. Oh, wow. So what about for your own films? Has it been difficult to get them funded?
Always, always. We have really struggled with funding, and most of our funding has come from abroad. Actually, almost no funding has come from within India. So we are quite dependent on funding from abroad, and we have made films for, like our films have shown on Arte and Canal Plus and France Television here, and PBS and ABC and SBS in Australia, and so really with the BBC we have made films. So we worked with broadcasters everywhere, and we basically with our fiction films we've gone to film festivals around the world. But to get a release in France or in Europe has been a struggle. Our early films in the early 90s have had theatrical releases in Europe, but now it's become so much harder to do that. But US remains the place where we can actually get theatrical releases. And we have, for most of our films, had a theatrical release, a limited theatrical release in, say, New York, on the West Coast, in limited cinemas. We've managed to do that.
Okay, so I have two questions that arise from that. The first is how you managed to establish, I'll talk into the microphone, how you managed to establish those relationships in Europe. Have you always lived in the Dharamsala, or, how did you establish those relationships? And the second is about why it's easier to get a theatrical release in the States, because that seems counterintuitive to me. So,
okay. No, we've lived in many parts of the world. I actually had a job just after I finished my undergraduate studies where I was based in Brussels, but traveling around Europe, promoting Indian tea. So that was like my first job before I got into actually studying film, but I was watching a lot of films as I traveled around Europe. And then both Tenzing and I studied in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco area. So we started making films there, and there was a very, very vibrant independent film community there where people really helped each other. And so I interned early days at the San Francisco International Film Festival. I was an intern at the Pacific Film Archives where, I used to do work so I would get free tickets to go and see movies. And then we moved to London where we were involved with documentary filmmaking for many years. And much later, we moved to Dharamsala. But now we've been in Dharamsala 25 years, so it's been a long, long time. So that's our journey, which is why we have connections in different parts of the world. And when we thought of starting the film festival in Dharamsala, we had, of course, never done anything like that, but we'd been to so many film festivals around the world, and they'd been so hospitable. And we had just, understood how valuable they are, like to show your film to audiences and to actually have that experience as a filmmaker, like gives you not only confidence, but just nurtures you and makes you feel like you can go on with the struggle for your next film. And that's why we thought it was important to start a festival. That's one of the reasons we thought that was important. There was a second part of the question.
The second question was about why it would be easier to get a theatrical release in the States, but I think you've sort of answered it in the sense it sounds like you have a depth of network in the States from the fact that you studied and lived there.
That's right.
Is that?
That's partly it, and partly many of our films, as I mentioned, have been about Tibet, and there's a lot of interest in Tibet in the US, much more than in India. And also, if our films are made in the Tibetan language, in India there's not many people who want to be watching a Tibetan language film. Subtitles are a problem, have been a problem in the past, even as we know, in the US or anywhere in the world, but they're still a little bit more open to, Indians watching a film of our kind, yeah.
And so what's been the impediment to your films being released theatrically in Europe?
I think earlier on, as I mentioned to you, in the early 90s, we had made a documentary, and in the German-speaking world, it had like 80,000 entries. So that was really very good at the time. But just because theatrical has become difficult for everyone, and there is less and less interest in stories from around the world, is what I see, right? Everyone is more inward-looking now in Europe, so it just becomes harder. Just because there are so many good films being made, and to compete with everyone to get your film released, it's tough. I guess one knows the realities of this independent filmmaking world, and it's hard, and there are different flavors of the month or the year. Things change, and sometimes things are better, and other times a bit slower. But I guess we're always searching for new audiences. We know that audience exists, and there are different, there was television, there's been theatrical, now there's OTT, and everyone's moving on and trying to figure out, how we can get our films to the audience that we know is there.
And is the festival, I mean, obviously you said that you enjoyed going to festivals around the world and that's why you wanted to set it up, but is it also partly, has it got a vocation of making sure films that are from Dharamsala find their audience also?
There are very few films from Dharamsala. I mean, it's really a tiny town.
Oh, speak to me of it. Give me an image of what Dharamsala is like.
In Dharamsala, there is the Dhauladhar range, and it's a kind of spur of the Himalayas. So it's the closest you have the Himalayas coming into the plains, and the mountain, which is right behind us, I think it's about 17,000 feet. So it's like a great wall, And there's a valley called the Kangra Valley, and this is where the small town of Dharamsala is. It was a kind of British hill station until there was an earthquake in the early part of the last century. So things slowed down. And when the Dalai Lama came, that was a place for the Indian government to resettle him. And so it became vibrant. First, there were a lot of spiritual seekers, people who were interested in politics. All kinds of people from around the world moved there. And now it's just, a lot of people from around India moving there. There's quite a lot of tourism. But for its size, it's very diverse. And, so we have restaurants from Korean restaurants to Taiwanese restaurants to, Italian restaurants. And normally in a small town in India, you wouldn't have that. So it's a surprisingly international town for its size. And it's very, very beautiful because we have this beautiful mountain behind us. So.
Sounds like a beautiful place for a festival.
Yeah. I think people love to come there for that reason as well, because it's such a break from the cities where people live, and everyone likes to come somewhere beautiful, for a festival. I think that's something we've learned because we've been to festivals like Tromsø International Film Festival, which is in the Arctic in Norway, and then we've been to the Amazonas Film Festival, which was in Manaus, in the Opera House. And so, there's a whole range of film festivals in the world. And so we realized you can do a film festival anywhere. And when we started our film festival, there was no cinema in this town. So it's a town without any cinemas. So that was a bit of a challenge.
To have a film festival with no cinemas. Wow, how do you do that?
So it's like a pop-up film festival, I'd say. You have to pop up. We had to get equipment from Delhi. We had to get projectors and screens, and now we get DCP, and we also there's a partner we have, and they bring little mobile trucks where you can see films inside the mobile truck. So the equipment gets driven up, and then. It's a mobile truck with a theater.
Do people sit inside the truck and watch
the
film?
The truck has a kind of big, it's like a big balloon, like a screen, and a encasing. So you're sort of sitting inside a mobile cinema.
Wow.
So that's one of our screens, but there is also the Tibetan Institute of Performing Arts, which is our main venue, and they have a theater for performance, which is for about 500 people. So, we have 2 or 3 different cinemas, but they're not really cinemas. So, and during the festival, we also have a fair, a pop-up fair with local foods and local artisans selling their wares. And so it's also organizing a little kind of like a Christmas fair here or something.
I understand.
Something like that.
And so it's got a very particular identity and one that would attract a certain type of filmmaker, perhaps a type of filmmaker that just precisely you're seeking to support and and so how many films screen at the festival?
So normally our festival runs for 4 days, and we have about 30 feature-length films and maybe about 20 shorts. We show documentary and fiction from around the world, and shorts are mainly from India, but not solely from India. Um, and we have panel discussions and master classes, and we try to invite as many filmmakers as possible because the idea of engaging with filmmakers and their process is very important to us. So the filmmaker, the independent filmmaker, is at the center of our programming. I think what especially filmmakers in India find is they often go to a big film festival where the stars, the Bollywood stars or somebody or big filmmakers are at the center. And if you're a smaller filmmaker or a documentary filmmaker, you're like sidelined a bit. And in our festival, you're really very much at the center. And I think that's what we like to do. And we've managed to do that. And I think that's very special, a particular aspect of our festival. But when we've been online for the last 2 years, and we're the first festival that went online last year. And online, we've been showing about 120 films because we could then expand our program because we didn't have the limitations of space.
Wow, that's a really interesting take because, we've been talking a lot about the restrictions of COVID, and in a sense, it's actually enabled you to expand and reach wider audiences, I imagine. Have you had more spectators for those films as well?
Yeah. So we've had, I think we've had the same amount of audiences, but the audiences have been around India. And some of our films have been available around the world as well, because depending on what the filmmakers want, we geo-block to, whichever region they want us to geo-block to. So if the filmmakers have been we've been able to reach wider audiences. We've been able to reach wider audiences. So I think that's been a great thing. I think the other advantage we've had is we've had a lot of panel discussions and, talks because people don't actually have to physically come to Dharamsala. So that's the other thing that has been enabled by, being online. It's not the same as talking like we're doing now, but still, it's interesting, the conversations we've had over this period. So I think that's the other positive that's come off it. And now that we've done this 2 years in a row, and we just finished our 10th edition of our festival before coming here, I hope next year it's going to be a physical festival.
I hope so for you too. And because you're here in Nantes, you're in a position to know what it's like here. Do you feel similarities between the flavor of things here and the festival you're running? Because I was thinking particularly about the fact that you said you're not seeking to create a hierarchy of those who are elite and so on, but really to democratize the thing. Do you feel
very much so? When we first were in contact with Guillaume, we immediately felt that connection. We immediately felt we were really in sync. And also we had conversation online with Jerome, and we realized we're driven by our love of cinema, our love of supporting original voices, not really looking at hierarchies or film stars or what's going to sell or, what's going to get the largest number of views. We're not looking for that. Of course, we all want audiences, but we're not going to be prioritizing things that are just going to sell. So it's kind of very, I don't think the word is traditional, but yes, we're coming from a place of kind of cinema-loving people, who've grown up like watching cinema in the theaters.
I understand you mean sort of purist at some level, yes.
Some sort of like purist cinema. But, even purists have to adapt. And I'm not saying we're rigid in that way, but yes, we do have that sort of spirit of loving good cinema and really appreciating voices of filmmakers who are trying to tell very genuine, original stories.
And filmmakers whose voices wouldn't be heard without forums such as yours. So there's the festival here, but there's also the Produire au Sud program, which is, an industry program to incubate projects and filmmakers from the 3 continents. Do you have something similar, an industry program attached to the Dharamsala Festival?
No, so at the Dharamshala International Film Festival, we don't have a annual program that's gone on for the last 10 years. And partly that's because funding is very, very hard to come by. We don't have any funding from the state. We have to really find funds as we go along every year. But what we have done is for about 6 of these 10 years, we ran a workshop for Himalayan filmmakers. So a mentorship program that's similar, maybe smaller in scale, but we've had 2 or 3 very, very renowned filmmakers working with Himalayan filmmakers. And it's similar in the sense that these filmmakers don't have access to, which they just don't even have the opportunity to talk to really proper filmmakers or film professionals, get feedback from them regarding their projects. So it gives them a lot of confidence and has really helped their projects. So we have been doing that. And we've also in the past had some edit labs. We've tried many different things, but it's not been constant. And I think now that we're planning the partnership with North, hopefully we can have something continuous that we do together every year. I think that's the beauty of having an association with a program that's already got such a great track record for the last 20 years.
Well, thank you for introducing that subject, because that's obviously very important. On this 20th anniversary, this new partnership being established, so will make the 7th regional workshop for Produire au Sud. Can you tell me how that came about? Like, how did you meet Guillaume? And
there is an Institut Français in India, and the person who was in charge there was a very lovely man called Pierre, and he was like, I think you really like these people, you must get in touch with them. He just had a sense that, we're very, very close in the way we think. And so he did an email introduction, and we exchanged an email or two, and then nothing much happened after that. And then I think it was last year around this time, we got in touch with Guillaume once again online and had an initial conversation. And he was like, we're very much interested in maybe coming to Dharamsala and doing something together. And then last month, Guillaume and Juliette, who's the new person at the Institute in India, came to Dharamsala. Yeah, they came to Dharamsala and just came to check out the place and check us out, I guess. And yes, I think we were in agreement. We thought, yes, we can work together and this should go very well. And then they invited us over here just to get a sense and a feel and also see what's happening during the workshop here. So we are, checking out how it works, understanding it better, so that we can then set up a workshop in India, which is meant for South Asia, in a way that we think is best suited for the filmmakers in that region. So I think to work together to create something that's really suitable for the filmmakers there is really the challenge, because I think the local flavor of each continent, everything is so different and it's changing so fast. And I think ideally we need to do something that's suitable for South Asia at this time.
That's very interesting to me, because I've heard a lot from both Élise Jalado, who founded Produire au Sud, and Guillaume, about their desire to ensure that there's real partnerships and that it's not that it could not be construed as, France teaches this country how to make films. And so it's very interesting for me to have you here and to hear that, that you consider yourself absolutely an active participant in constructing this new relationship and building a workshop that is adapted to your region. So how concretely is that going to happen? Are you having meetings here at the festival, or are you sitting in and watching the Produire au Sud, or how are you going to proceed from here with Guillaume, or is it a bit fuzzy at the moment?
No, so we are attending some of the sessions, and we have met some of the participants and also the trainers. we have, because I've been part of this industry for a while and have myself attended some labs and have been to some markets, so I have some idea of how it works. But we're trying to understand exactly how Produire soon works. And then I think, because right now everyone is so busy at the festival, so then we will set up some online sessions and actually work out what is best and how best to proceed.
Isn't it appropriate that there's sort of a co-production relationship happening between your two entities, your festival and this festival, that will precede the co-production incubators, of the filmmakers? Sounds a bit like an online marriage too, doesn't it? You met online and then you have to line up the physical meetings, suss each other out.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, it's easier, right? I mean, we had a little bit of an online connect, and then we could take it further. I mean, if somebody just landed up, maybe you wouldn't like them.
So tell me about, I mean, I know it's too early to say what you will definitely be doing with Guillaume, but tell me, just let me in a little bit on your vision for what it could be. When you lie in bed at night and you're dreaming and you're getting ideas, what are you imagining? Are you imagining people flying into the Dharamsala from abroad? Are you imagining them coming from close by? Are you imagining? What are you seeing?
No, so I mean, basically South Asia is quite a large region, right? So we have many, many countries. It's the SAARC countries. So we are going to really have to, in this next phase, really reach out to the film communities in these regions. And we're well connected with some of those film communities already, but we need to do more work and actually reach out to them really well so that we get the best applicants from these regions. So I think that's really from our side one of the big jobs that needs to be done. And the next part is, of course, finding the right mentors. And of course, Guillaume knows a lot of good people, but I think we also want mentors from our region, right, who understand the day-to-day problems of people from our region. I think the combination of the two is ideal. So we will be keeping a lookout for who these people might be. I think otherwise, Guillaume has so much experience. So I think in terms of the way the lab is structured, I think they know what they're doing. And while we're here, we're also going to be checking out things. So, we'll take it as it comes. We have still a year to put this together because we're planning to do this October 2022. So we have some time.
So those who are watching this interview will be waiting with bated breath for the announcement so that it can apply.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see how it looks. I want to go to the Dharamsala. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll look forward to seeing you around the festival.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.